Declassified files from the Central Intelligence Agency reveal scientists studying ways to secretly influence human behavior through chemicals in food, psychological pressures, sensory manipulation, and experimental drugs like vaccines. It was called Project Artichoke, the early phase of the infamous Project MKUltra. And once you see what they were willing to experiment with back then, you start to wonder what lessons carried forward into the modern world. Let's dig in. Back in 1952, CIA memos from Project Artichoke, that's the twisted precursor to MKUltra, laid out chilling schemes to covertly manipulate human behavior. We're talking slipping chemicals into everyday staples like food, water, Coke, beer, liquor, cigarettes, and even standard medical treatments like vaccinations and shots. These drugs were designed to trigger depression, anxiety, hopelessness, nervousness, and lethargy, all without your knowledge or consent. It sounds like dystopian fiction, but it's real. They admitted hundreds of substances could mess with our minds, but savvy folks may dodge them. So they also wanted to explore even more covert options like gases, aerosols, and oxygen deprivation as effective tools. Gas guns, sprays, hidden or overt, were on the table despite risks like permanent brain damage or amnesia. They explored ultrasonic sounds, whispers, monotonous noises, and vibrations to warp your psychology. Biological agents like microbes or mushrooms for fever, intoxication, or mental breakdowns were suggested. Dietary tricks such as depriving nutrients like sugar, calcium, and vitamins from prisoners' meals to help break them down was perfect for artichoke work. Even spicy or salty foods to induce thirst and vulnerability. Electroshock was said to be controversial and iffy, but they wanted more studies on normal people. Electronarcosis and sleep machines from places like the University of Richmond Hospital detailed non-painful ways to induce sleep for hypnotic control. Lobotomies were flagged as not for operational use, but worth watching if the Soviets at the time were using them. Light tricks with glaring bulbs, white walls, infrared, ultraviolet, and color projections for conditioning. Psychological ploys like vibrating rooms, capitalizing on phobias, extreme heat, cool, dampness, soundproof isolation to crank up anxiety and susceptibility to things like interrogation. They even dreamed up a hypo spray pen for discreet drug injections and a World War II German Scheintot pistol using gas to knock people out, with a similar effect to ether. Fast forward to 2021, and most of the global population gets coerced into COVID jabs, masquerading as vaccines. And now there's skyrocketing depression, anxiety, and brain fog, the exact symptoms plotted by the CIA decades ago. A population-based study in North Korea, psychiatric adverse events following COVID-19 vaccination show a rise in everything from schizophrenia, depression, bipolar disorder, anxiety, to sleep and sexual disorders, all up. Associations between COVID-19 vaccination and the development of Alzheimer's disease have been explored. A possible mechanism includes lingering spike protein remaining in or around the brain, contributing to long-term neurological problems seen in some COVID-19 patients, meaning that viral proteins could directly or indirectly affect brain function even after the virus is gone. Evidence shows spike proteins can breach the blood-brain barrier, unleashing not only chaos, but also many unknowns. Then you tie this into the pandemic's psyops, industrial strength mind control via behavioral science units, nudging compliance, fear porn, and cognitive warfare, and it's a recipe for a population conditioned to obey, primed for anxiety, and subtly reshaped in thought and behavior without even realizing it.
If there are people who are non-compliant, there are definitely laws and public health powers that can quarantine people in mandatory settings.
Decades of experimental tactics distilled into modern-scale social control.
In the past, we would talk about psychological warfare. It has been used historically by military to try to influence other militaries' perception, morale, and so on. Cognitive warfare now is leveraging new approaches in psychology, new understanding of how the brain functions, new technology, of course, like social media, the ability to penetrate into people's home and through their devices, through their brain.
Couple all of this with plant-based vaccines and the ability to seamlessly integrate this into our food supply. It doesn't seem like some far-fetched sci-fi plot anymore.
Researchers have just launched a late-stage clinical trial on a whole new kind of COVID-19 vaccine, one that's grown in plants. They're looking for volunteers in San Diego.
And who's quietly buying up massive swaths of U.S. farmland and investing in seed banks? None other than Bill Gates, the same Gates whose ties to Jeffrey Epstein extended into discussions about biological defense, neurotechnology, digital health data systems, and pandemic simulations.
Bill Gates is not a philanthropist because he gives a little bit of money to take over entire sectors. I work on seed. The big seed banks are called the CJR system. He gives $1 million here, but he takes all the seeds of that system, the ICRISAT system. All of these seed banks of the world he now controls by giving a tiny bit. But that's not where he stops. He then promotes technologies for patenting. Gene editing technologies, digital sequence technologies.
This overlap of food, health, and surveillance power gives kind of Agenda 2030 eugenics vibes. You know, truth stranger than fiction. If you think that everyone deserves to know who's pulling the strings and how manipulation, coercion, and psychological tactics are used to shape public behavior, then don't keep this report to yourself. Like, subscribe, and share this video so more people can see it and start asking questions, because ignorance may be bliss, but knowledge is power. For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini. This is exactly why we must always be able to choose. Yet in Ontario, innocent school children are being coerced into getting vaccinated over the threat of sweeping suspension orders. To learn more about this topic and sign our petition calling for the end of vaccine coercion, go to stopvaccinecoercion.com. That's stopvaccinecoercion.com.